can't get up at some point.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure and honor to welcome you all here at the Diplomatic Academy, and it's a very special honor to welcome the President of Kosovo, Mr. Thaçi. Welcome to here. You may see here at the podium that we have a surprise guest, which we are also very proud of. I welcome the Prime Minister of Albania and Iran. He has been here already as an opposition politician quite some years ago at the Academy here. I also welcome Albert Laurent, the former Secretary General in the Foreign Ministry. Welcome. And last but not least, Wolfgang Petric, the former Special Envoy for Kosovo. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a book presentation. And it is not very often the case that young people get books written about them. Having said this, I am from a country, from Austria, where an even younger politician has already 2 biographies written about him, our Austrian Prime Minister. But maybe this is another sign that the Balkans and Austria are not so far asunder, one might say. It's a real pleasure to speak tonight about the success of the youngest state in Europe. And the success of the youngest state in Europe, to a certain extent, is also the success of one person. This one person is now the President of Kosovo, Thaçi, and this biography we are talking about, and mainly those Austrians who dealt with him and with the situation 20 years and 10 years ago, that is Wolfgang Petric and Albert Laurent, we discuss their experience and how it was possible that something happened that we Austrians are all very, very grateful for. The book has been written by 2 British journalists, and you will have afterwards the chance to receive a copy of this book, and President Thaçi also agreed to sign it. This book has been written by journalists, and one of them should have been here tonight. She apologizes for not being able with us, but she sent me a letter. And in this letter, she explained why she has written this book. It's a letter by Miss Susie Jagger, and she asked me to tell you that from the previous book presentations in places like London, Paris, Berlin, and The Hague, she learned a few things she wanted to share with us. And I read what she wants to share with us. Despite insistence of many of our peers in the media, the Western Balkans is not quite completely forgotten on the political agenda, she says. Experienced diplomats still remember the Kosovo War, as well as the principal stakeholders in NATO bombing and the aftermath of Kosovo's liberation. At the same time, new diplomats are learning about the region as it is slowly creeping in the agenda of EU enlargement. We have met many senior diplomats, journalists, academics, and activists still interested and rather active in promoting the agenda of progress in Kosovo and the Balkans to their respective audience. And then she says, we feel lucky to have been able to document the journey of Kosovo from a tortured province, suffering and impeding genocide, to an international UN protectorate, to a free and democratic country that today is. History of Kosovo mirrors very much the history of President Thaçi. We thought it would be an interesting project to write his biography as Kosovo was preparing its 10th anniversary. I agree. I think it is a good time to do this. At this place at the Academy, we already organized a few weeks ago a conference on these 10 years on the challenges. Tonight it's about one of the heroes of these times, and actually the 2 authors start the book. When you read the first sentence they write in the book, you will see it. They say, there are a lot of heroes in history, Most of those heroes can start as terrorists and then become revolutionary leaders, and then they are killed, or they are lost in the reform processes. This is the normal case in European history, and I remember from the changes in Central Europe that all those revolutionary heroes, just to mention names like Václav Havel and others, did not play for a long time a leading role after the changes. Thaçi is an exception. He has been there from the very beginning as a history student, so that's something we have in common, to turning someone who had to fight with the Serbs, to someone who had to negotiate in Amouir, the Paris, then to someone who had to convince his own people of what he thought is the right thing to do, then for someone who had to run for elections, then to reform his country, and then to be elected as the president of his country. So this is quite a long journey for someone as young as President Thaçi. And I'm much looking forward that we discuss what happened in these years, what the situation is, and what the future of this important Balkan country is. I think I don't have to repeat this, but most of you know this. We, with all our heart and mind, support Kosovo, including also the integration process in the European Union. But this is maybe not only for the record, but because it is very well known that we think this is necessary. So thank you very much, and I pass on the word now to the two Austrians who were, I think, the most important by far, I have to say, the most important who participated in this process. And I would like to start with Albert Rouen, who was deputy in the committee, which was instrumental and necessary to ensure that Kosovo can become an independent state. Albert, the floor is yours.
Prime Minister Rama, ladies and gentlemen, I first met Hashim Thaçi when I paid him a visit at his party headquarters shortly after the war. And I remember inquiring where within the political spectrum his new party would be positioned and which European family of parties the PDK would eventually join. Thaçi indicated that his party was a center party, but it was obvious that his total focus was on the overriding goal of Kosovo's independence and not so much on the ideological positioning of his party. Our next meeting was over lunch at the restaurant in Pristina, just the two of us, and I noticed that people were coming up to our table to greet him, to talk to him, and I was highly impressed by the obvious popularity he enjoyed. On that occasion, he told me that he was giving some thought to the question of what one could offer to the Serbian side to make Kosovo's independence more accepted. I thought it was remarkable that the political leader of Kosovo, which had undergone such tragic experiences during the preceding years, would try to put himself into the shoes of the other side and try to take into account their interests. I thought it was a sign of political wisdom and indeed of statesmanship, but I think that the title of the book has been well chosen. During the almost 3 decades of my involvement in the affairs of Kosovo, the issue has evolved in distinct steps. At first, it was mainly a human rights concern. Later, when Yugoslavia dissolved, the constitutional aspect moved into the foreground. Then came the armed confrontation, and later the period of diplomacy, which included 2 major international efforts, which was the Conference of Amboyer and the Vienna status talks. In parallel, Thaçi's personality evolved, from a student leader to a warrior, to a diplomat, to a politician. But in all these phases, he played a leading role along Kosovo's path to independence. The most interesting chapter of this book, in my view, is the one on the conference of Montpellier. Not in the least because it was there that Thaçi became the recognized political leader of the Kosovars. And the book describes well the enormous pressures to which he was exposed. With on the one side, the military commanders in Kosovo who expected nothing but independence from Mongolia, or at least the explicit promise of an independence referendum. On the other side, the internationals who wanted a success story at all costs. In fact, Rambouillet had to fail in order to trigger the NATO intervention, which was the strategic goal of the Kosovo Liberation Army. But the accord, the agreement had to be fair and acceptable to both sides, also to the Serbian side. That meant that the Kosovars had to agree to provisions which fell far short of what they wanted. Thaçi understood this complex diplomatic maneuvering, and it is to his credit that at considerable personal risk he managed to convince his comrades in the field to give their agreement. As we know, Milosevic rejected the Rambouillet Accord, not because of the language on status, which was more than vague, but because of the military annex, which was unacceptable to Serbia. As a consequence, NATO intervened, and the Serbian rule in Kosovo came to an end. 7 years later, the Vienna status talks led finally to Kosovo's independence. They were different from the Rambouillet conference, both in procedure and substance. In Vienna, the two sides talked to each other face to face, and the major powers which had driven the Rambouillet conference took only a supporting role in Vienna. The contact group did issue guiding principles for the process, which Marta Tessera and I found extremely helpful, but it didn't intervene in the negotiations. We kept them informed in the proceedings at all times, but it was clear that we were in the driver's seat. From the outset, it was clear to us that independence had to be the future status of Kosovo. Anything else would have been totally unrealistic. So what we tried to achieve in Vienna was some kind of balance between the interests of the two sides. For Kosovo there was independence, and for Serbia there was the survival of the Serbian community in Kosovo on offer. That's why the Vienna talks focused on issues like minority rights, local self-government in order to allow the Kosovo Serbs to run their own affairs at the municipal level, and the protection of the Serbian Orthodox Church, including through privileges and immunities, and the establishment of protective zones around their most important religious sites. Unfortunately, Belgrade refused to enter into agreements on such provisions, which were mostly in favor of the Serbian community. After 17 rounds of negotiations, we determined that there was no hope for progress, and further talks would therefore be senseless, and we ended the process. But since it was our mandate to bring about a solution to the status issue, we decided to make our own proposal based on Kosovo's recent history, on the situation on the ground, on the views of the contact group, and on the arguments which had been put forward in Vienna during our talks. And this became the Ahtisaari plan. Here I would like to put the record straight on a few points. In the book it is said that the Ahtisaari plan did not mention independence. I think this is a misunderstanding. The core element of the Ahtisaari plan was his recommendation on the fundamental issue of status, and the recommendation was independence with a few qualifications. And this was contained in Ahtisaari's report to the Secretary General of the UN, where he goes on to explain why all the alternatives, including autonomy within Serbia or the continuation of the status quo, were unfeasible. The whole package, the report, plus the attached proposals on detailed provisions covering the whole field of public domain, from constitutional aspects to security and economic matters. This whole package was the Ahtisaari plan, and it was transmitted by Ban Ki-moon to the Security Council and published as a council document. Also, in the book, it is claimed that there were possible loopholes with regard to the proposed new Serbian majority municipalities. In fact, the Ahtisaari plan is very precise on this issue. It proposed 6 new municipalities, listing the cadastral zones which had to be included in each case, and the corresponding maps. So there couldn't be any doubt about the dimension of this proposal, and the new municipalities were later established on the basis of this very precise proposal. Finally, I think that Hashim Thaçi's role during and after the Vienna talks are somewhat underexposed in the book. It is true that Thaçi was not in government at the time and therefore didn't participate in the two so-called elephant rounds when presidents and prime ministers of the two countries came to Vienna from the beginning of the talks from the end. But his closest, one of his closest associates, Enver Hoxha, was a permanent member of the Kosovo delegation and very actively participated in all the regular working sessions of the Vienna talks. Moreover, such as political support for the Vienna process as member of the team of group was extremely important. And even more so when it came to the question of the acceptance of the Ahtisaari plan by the Kosovars. This was not easy. The Ahtisaari plan was a compromise. It demanded considerable concessions from the side of Kosovo. But it had to be fair, it had to be at least objectively acceptable also to the Serbian side. And we knew that many governments would later make their recognition of Kosovo dependent on the credibility of the Ahtisaari plan and on its acceptance by Kosovo. On the whole, the leadership in Kosovo understood this, but it was of course of vital importance that the head of the opposition, Thaçi, would give his support. During the last 10 years, ladies and gentlemen, progress was difficult to achieve in Kosovo, both with regard to the international status of the country and the internal situation. For the next decade, I am convinced that priority should be given to Kosovo's inclusion into the European integration process. The obstacles, we all know them, they are huge, and it will require from the leadership in Kosovo wisdom, patience, perseverance, and the determination to jointly focus on this priority. And I hope that in 10 years' time, the authors of this book or somebody else would write another book in which they would be able to record the many successes and achievements of Kosovo statesman Hašim Thaçi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Laurent, for inviting people already to write the next book. But we are still, I guess we are interested to discuss this book, and our next commentator is Wolfgang Petritsch. So we go back in time. Wolfgang Petritsch was EU Special Envoy to Kosovo, and was before that ambassador in Belgrade, and he stayed in the region, and later on, as most of you know, he worked in Bosnia. Wolfgang Petritsch is someone obviously who very much likes Hašim Thaçi, because I found in the book on page number 61, but maybe it's not right. It said, and I have to read this sentence, it was Wolfgang Petritsch, erstwhile Austrian ambassador to Belgrade, and Chris Hill, America's special representative to Kosovo, who had talent spotted it, Thaçi. So, Wolfgang, did you talent spot Thaçi?
Well, it's of course very difficult to speak in, so to speak, in front of the object that we are now discussing. But I would nevertheless like to share with you the story how I actually met for the first time, or actually spoke for the first time with Hašim Thaçi, and that was in 1998, when it was virtually unknown who actually runs the KLA shop, so to speak. There were no names, and Hašim Thaçi, of course, was also a no name at the time. And the Americans, and at the time I was already the EU Special Envoy, working very closely with Chris Hill, the American Special Envoy, and there was Richard Holbrooke, this legendary American diplomat who had negotiated the Dayton Accords, who was also active in the field. And he sat down with someone who claimed that he is actually the leader of the KLA, but there was a photo which really made the world media, and then it turned out it was the regional commander, but Holbrooke already had taken off his shoes and was sitting there as his customs there somewhere in Kosovo, and it was kind of embarrassing for the superpower that this was not really, so to speak, the Hašim Thaçi that we are all looking for. Now, on my side, clearly we were extremely careful now to say, well, we should not also sit down with someone who then, it turns out, is not the right person. But of course, how to find out about it? And I just spoke with Blair Shala, who is also here with us, and he was very much younger, of course, as we all were at the time, and also Veton Suroy, who spoke to some journalists to whom we had established a very good rapport and could speak about, so to speak, background, deep background. And so they sort of pointed in this direction that actually we should try and get this guy, he's a very young guy, barely 28 years old, who is actually the one who is somehow in command of the KLA. There was then in early 1999 an opportunity really to test it, whether this is true or not, because I could not at the time just present someone to our Secretary General in the Foreign Ministry, Mr. Hall, and say, okay, he is the leader, we really had to do a very careful research on this. And the opportunity occurred when we, in early 1999, were asked by Belgrade to negotiate the release of about 10 or 12 soldiers from the Yugoslav army who were taken in by the KLA. And so we at the time then were trying to put together some sort of a plan, exchange of prisoners, one would say, but it was of course not an exchange. But what we wanted to achieve was, in fact, a de facto exchange of prisoners. So we kind of arranged somewhere in the mountains. There's a funny story also attached to this. When we were driving in our armored Mercedes, and my assistant, a young Kickert, who is now our UN ambassador, was driving, and all of a sudden the car stopped in the middle of nowhere somewhere. We didn't know where. And we were following a car, a KLA car, who would have brought us to this hidden village somewhere. And there, well, what to do now? We were stuck there, and then one of the two in this car, the KLA people, said, "Well, I'm a mechanic, I can look into this, but we had to go on because they were waiting for us to start the negotiations." And so I did something which, thank God, I never regretted, but I could have regretted it. I gave the key to this very expensive armored vehicle to this totally unknown guy who was promising to fix it and then bring it to the village where I am. And we went into the other car and we went there and had a very successful meeting. And sort of worked out a plan how that would happen. First, the Yugoslav soldiers would be released by the KLA, and then 10 days later, the Yugoslav army would, the Yugoslav government would, for the first time ever, release terrorists, those KLA people who were imprisoned somewhere. And this part I actually negotiated with Nikola Šajnović, who was at the time the deputy prime minister and the point man for Kosovo, who then, by the way, he got 25 years for his activities there. And so we had this deal, but when we finished this deal there, negotiating, then the KLA people there in the village said, well, but now in order to get the agreement, you need to talk to someone. And this was Thaçi on the phone, because Hashim was not there. Now there was a privilege that I had. Hashim at the time spoke much better German than other languages, and so I was the only one who actually could talk to him over the phone. And I was on the phone with him, and we spoke, and Hashim said, okay, let's go ahead and do this. Well, with this I knew at the time, he obviously is the one who calls the shots, who can take such a decision, such a crucial, very important decision. And this is how we identified Hashim as the leader of the KLA at the time. And just to add to this whole story, because it became even more, how should I say, complicated, because between the release of the Yugoslav army soldiers and the release of the planned release of the KLA people, Račak happened, and we all know what Račak meant. And at the time, then, when this happened, in mid-January, I called up Nikola Šajnović and said, listen, you know we have a deal. Do you stick to it? I expect you to stick to it. And he said, yes, we'll do this. And it indeed happened. This is, for me, quite an interesting, maybe, facet of this whole story. Now, of course, when young people already nowadays get biographies, when I met Hashim, he was even much, much younger, and when we then moved on to Rambouillet, which also was not a very easy thing to do, because at the time there was a huge and widening split within the Kosovo community between, so to speak, the old regime, Ibrahim Rugova, the president, and the new guys, the KLA people. We remember, of course, that Rugova had this non-violent approach, which I consider very important, actually. A realistic view on the situation, because the Yugoslav army, one of the strongest in Europe, would have smashed or would have tried to smash this meeting. By the way, once I said to Milosevic in one of our meetings, I said, I mean, you with your partisan tradition, do you really believe that you will be able to squash a guerrilla movement? So that just to explain how the situation was at the time, and we then. This split was of course for us at the time. Germany had the EU presidency, and we were already planning actually to first, before we move on to Rambouillet to start the negotiations, to first unify the Kosovo delegation, because we were not sure whether it would be the one or the other to actually to boycott or to really follow the invitation. It was a huge challenge to get then Yugoslavia, to get Belgrade to accept, in fact, to negotiate, first of all, with as they considered it, a terrorist organization, and secondly, outside of their own territory. Yeah? But we somehow managed to achieve this with all sorts of cajoling and pressure and promises. And but then we actually were confronted with the fact, what are we really going to get now? The full support on the part of the Kosovo delegation. But then, as I said, the planning for a meeting in Germany actually was quite well advanced. But then we found out actually Kosovo, obviously, all two camps realized that this is such a historic moment. This is so important to really stick together, and they all arrived via different ways in Rambouillet, in the castle, and we then started the negotiations. Then came the second surprise, actually. Of course, first of all, we were three negotiators. It was under the umbrella of the French and the British foreign ministers, in this hunting lodge of the French presidents, and the three negotiators were decided by the contact group, which indeed had a big word in this. And you need to keep in mind, Russia was fully on board in this. You know, this is particularly important when we see the situation right now. That again is this historic window of opportunity, I should stress, which was really used to the utmost by the Kosovars in order to achieve their goal. In the end, it would not be possible under the present geopolitical circumstances to achieve in such a short time period such a huge progress, and in the end a result which was desired so much by the Kosovo people, by the Kosovo Armenian people. Now, in Rambouillet, the decision was then up who is actually going to be the leader of the delegation, and we automatically assumed it would be Rugova as the president of Kosovo, as the most famous Kosovar and so on. And then all of a sudden, to our dismay, it turned out, no, it's not going to be Rugova, it's going to be Thaçi. We were at the beginning, of course, quite disappointed, but clearly we needed to respect any decision that was taken. And then actually it turned out that maybe Hashim, who knows more about his state of mind at the time, it was, of course, a very important decision that the head of the KLA actually was the head of the delegation, because one of the crucial issues, a conditio sine qua non, in order to get NATO to be the peacekeeping force there, was the disarming of the KLA. And now its own leader had actually, in the end, the task, the huge challenge, actually to sign the dismantlement of his own organization. And Hashim, if I'm correct, you of course only over time realized that this is going to be an extremely difficult decision to be taken, but of course you also realized that it will be necessary otherwise. And this was Secretary Albright who said so. This was Joschka Fischer with whom, if you remember, we had a meeting in more than an hour or so. We were also, the two of us, talking in my room for many hours and trying to find out how do we get out of the situation. Yeah? It was, of course, a hugely difficult situation because otherwise the conference would have faltered not on the Serbs but on the Albanians, on the Kosovo Albanians. Yeah? We then agreed that in this meeting, in this very tense meeting with the contact group foreign ministers, Albright, Ivanov, and Fini, and Fischer, and so on, that we would interrupt the conference and give both sides, because also the Belgrade side was saying, well, we need more time and so on. And I then seized this opportunity and said, okay, let's lock in what we have now and then move on from there after your return. And with Hashim, we said, I suggested to him first there was an idea of a referendum but that was of course not feasible. So we said, well, you go now and talk to your people whether this is acceptable or not. You need the public support of your people whether you can sign or cannot sign. And that indeed happened. We were also, I remember, traveling with the political director of the Germans also. We were traveling in Kosovo and also trying to kind of convince and explain above all to the regional leaders what it means to sign up. But what the consequences also are. And the consequences, clearly, and I suggested at the time to the leadership of the KLA, I said, well, you could turn into a politician. If you let the fighting go, then you could become a politician. But what about the local commanders and regional leaders? Of course, there was not for everybody a political job, so to speak. And many who actually, of course, identified very much with this fight for freedom saw themselves now taken away the weapon, the uniform, and they may be sent back to their villages where there was no work, and they again would be somewhere and had no job, but also no responsibility for freeing their own country. Clearly, at the time, we were also talking about the possibility that we need a national police force there and a military and so on. But it was somehow in the future, it was extremely difficult actually to convince and to say, listen, you really seize the moment, you have now the historic opportunity to do something, but it also means sacrificing something. That in the end happened, and as we know, and the rest is history, the Kosovo Albanian side signed up to the deal. The Belgrade did not, although the negotiating delegation had in writing, and I have published this letter, already committed themselves to continue to talk in Paris after 3 weeks, and have basically and implicitly accepted the proposal that there needs to be, in exchange for the demilitarization of Kosovo, and there needs to be an international peace force there. Yeah? That was clearly viewed as something which was necessary. Who else could have guaranteed the security, human security, and all this stuff for and in Kosovo? But then it was obviously a decision on the part of Milosevic not to sign the agreement. And I remember our last-ditch effort was when the three negotiators when we went to Belgrade to try and convince Milosevic, and we tried to explain what's in there. I mean, it was at the time not about independence. It was at the time about substantive autonomy. Of course, everybody was realistic about what in the mid to longer term would happen, but nevertheless, it would have been a deal where, in particular, in Kosovo itself, the Kosovo Serbs would have received, and they have it now. Of course, that's basically based on the Rambouillet Accord. Probably the best minority protection possible. In no other country there is such a high degree of minority protection, and I consider this correct. I think this is very important. And in the end, actually, it's only going to work, and I do hope, and I'm coming now to the present and the future, and I see again a historic window of opportunity now in 2018 and 19. The new Commission comes to a close. Ms. Mogherini, Mr. Juncker, they want something also for their legacy. They want to offer. They want to present something to the Europeans. This is what we have achieved. I see a much greater realism in Belgrade now. I think the relationship between the two presidents is actually on a personal level very good. Very respectful also for each other. I think a main precondition for a positive outcome. Rambouillet, just to say a last word, one of the deputy prime ministers at the time, Vuk Drašković, in an interview maybe 10 years after Rambouillet, was asked what do you regret the most in your political career? And he said that we did not sign Rambouillet. And this, I believe, is something which is in a way so characteristic also for the Serb side. They also talk today about solutions that 10 years ago maybe would have been possible. So it's always 10 years too late, and I do hope, and we should all support this time Belgrade and this, to get a solution now, because this, what is now on the table, and the Ahtisaari plan is the best possible outcome, and what Albert Rohr and Martin Ahtisaari have achieved is really something very special. But that now needs to be agreed on both sides, and then the big historic conflict between Albanians and Serbs will be put to rest, and the door will be opened to the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Petrovic, for all the optimism that you brought to this table here. Thank you also for mentioning how important actually it was that Rambouillet was not signed, from looking backward, but also from the moment now. You mentioned that the Serb army was one of the strongest in Europe, and at this moment, Yugoslav army, the moment I last time saw Serb army units was on the Red Square on the 9th of May, because the Serb army unit every year taking part in a parade in Moscow. But this is a comment which a moderator should not do anyway. We have heard about two Austrians talking about Hashim Thaçi, and we are happy and lucky to have an Albanian here also to talk about him. And I looked into this book, and Hashim Thaçi helped me. I found there is one picture of President Thaçi with the Pope, but there's also a picture with Edi Rama. So you must be close to him. There are two different pictures, actually, maybe even from different years, I suppose. So how do you see Prime Minister Irana, how do you see it? What happened in all these long years that Hashim Thaçi tried to gain independence of Kosovo?
First of all, I think it's well done. One picture with a pope, one picture with a sinner, and Hashim in the middle. So it's got a real president. No, I didn't read the book, frankly. Hashim gave it to me, but I didn't read it. But I have the fortune to know the open book Hashim is, and I think there is no book that can be written and exhaust the open book that he is. And when I have to think about Hashim, I always think about his life in wrong sequences, meaning first part writing a heroic poem of history, and second part dealing with the disheartening prose of daily politics in Kosovo, which should not be the easiest part, I guess. But in the same time, I strongly believe that Hashim is a man of destiny, and maybe what he's leaving the second sequence is just a transition towards the third one, which I guess can be the logical sequence of his life as a book, because he is engaged in this process of making the impossible possible by finding out how to salute this never-ending struggle with Serbia, and how to get out of it with a final and hopefully accepted solution from both sides. So it's it would be the synthesis of all his journey, if the first sequence and the second one will be like followed by this third one. And so he has won the war, he has been prime minister, he's been president, minister of foreign affairs, he can be ambassador if he wants. But it's not enough. It's not enough. So what else? Because he's too young. So he has to do the best to end with success the third sequence, and to possibly liberate Kosovo, not simply as he did in the first sequence, but to liberate Kosovo from these chains of conditionalities that are connected with the non-recognition, not only from Serbia, but also from a bunch of countries that will never recognize Kosovo if Serbia will not be the first to make this recognition. So somehow, by the irony of history, Hashim has to liberate also Serbs from their own nightmare. And I'm confident that in a way he will find the way, because the only important thing you didn't mention, his nickname was a Stain during the war. So it's not a bad one to think about finding the way to salute this incredible, difficult task of getting a compromise that would be accepted by both sides. So this is what I can say without reading the book.
if I read the book, I may say more or less, but I will read the book. I promise, Hashim. I will read the book. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Thaçi. You have one more reader of the book already tonight. That's very reader to be in the future, like many of you here. Well, we heard that Hasim Thaçi is a man for all seasons, and I hope for all seasons really. There is a famous play by a man called Robert Bolt, which is called A Man for All Seasons. And this is a play about Thomas Moros, a Catholic saint who stick to his principles. I'm not telling you what the fate of Thomas Moros was, but he's a saint now at least. When I read the book, before I asked President Thaçi to say something, I was impressed by many things. But I was especially impressed to what sort of persons he is compared in the book. He is at once compared with George Washington. I can understand this, looking at the history of Kosovo. He is compared to Winston Churchill. I can understand to a certain extent regarding the fights with the Serbs. But then he is also compared to Richard Nixon in this book. And at first, I couldn't understand why it's compared to Richard Nixon, not one of my heroes. But it says he's compared to Richard Nixon because he was the one who started the dialogue with the most difficult partner, with China. So you are the Richard Nixon of Kosovo because you do the dialogue now with Serbia. But President Thaçi, I do not want to comment it. I give the floor to you. You should have the word.
Thank you very much. Dear friends, thank you very much. Then Prime Minister Rama, you find time to come tonight here. It was surprising that I was yesterday here and had a meeting with Chancellor Kurz, and today Prime Minister Rama. It means our address from Western Balkans to Kosovo, Albania, and other countries continue to be, I would say, as the window of opportunity and hopes for the EU integration. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here, Mr. Briggs. Our modern history is very much connected to Vienna, to Austrian diplomats, to Austrian universities, and Austrian human rights activists. From Christina von Kohl to Otto von Habsburg, and from Olegmo to Rohan and Petric, Kosovo has always found support here. Austria did not discover Balkans in the 90s. Austria knew Balkans very well because our history is connected in many ways. The sword and the helmet of Albanian national hero Skanderbeg, after the Paris, are here in Vienna. Hasan Pristina, one of the Kosovo's greatest historical figures, also fled to Vienna when Serbia occupied Kosovo in 1980. But Vienna is also a place where President Ahtisaari and also the Rohan held talks on the final status of Kosovo. Their solution was supervised independence, and based on the solution found in Vienna, we become an independent and sovereign state. To come to this solution, Kosovo made a lot of compromises. Ladies and gentlemen, for me personally, Vienna also has a meaning because when I was a very young boy, after high school, but before becoming active in student politics, I visited Vienna. My 4 brothers were working here, living in St. Petersburg. Here I began to learn the das for the German language. I discovered here a new world, better than the darkness in which Albanians in Yugoslavia lived. This was in winter of 89. I was just 1. The wind of change in Western Europe was blowing strong. Perestroika in the Soviet Union was underway. Regimes of Honecker, Ceausescu, Enver Hoxha, Tito, and Živko were falling down. Ideas of Havel and Valensa were spreading all over. But my small country, Kosovo, was born. Milosevic had been consolidated at the time as a leader in Serbia. People in Kosovo were losing hope for democracy and freedom. The crisis in Slovenia, in Croatia, in Bosnia were escalating. Here in Vienna, I could see people were free to speak, to write, to travel, to work, and to enjoy life. It is here that I developed even stronger my sense for freedom of my country. This is why I respect and I love Vienna. Again, a few moments to go back. It was Austrian diplomats, now Ambassador Fickert, Ambassador Lohan, and Ambassador Petric. In summer 1998, who were the first European diplomats for more diplomat activists and efforts speak Ambassador Lohan and Ambassador Petric for the involvement of Ambassador Lohan of the Americans, but for the first European diplomat who reached me and my friends in the most remote place to invite and to convince us to become part of the political process. My colleagues and me were freedom fighters, unknown to the international community. It was Wolfgang and Albert that had the courage to trust in us. They had the patience to listen to us. I know it was not easy for them. For that, I will remain forever grateful. Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday with Chancellor Kurz, we had a chance to speak about the future. Sebastian is a strong supporter of Kosovo's international position, and he is personally very much involved in helping Western Balkans in EU integration. We discussed Kosovo's visa liberalization process and how Austria is one of the biggest foreign investors in Kosovo. And we talked about the final chapters in the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia. Now we concluded that now in the crucial moment, a historical opportunity, the right time and the right leadership to start and to achieve the agreement. We cannot move forward, engage in compromise, and help both people in Kosovo and Serbia achieve normalization and historic reconciliation. Or we can be stopped in status quo and invite forces of extremism, nationalism, and external dangers to destroy all the progress we achieve. I believe, and most political parties agree, that we must move towards permanent solution. Solution ladies and gentlemen, is very close, but at the same time is very far. This is why we need a strong leadership from Brussels, and we need strong support from Washington. Ladies and gentlemen, these are three critical elements for dialogue to succeed. First, we need very focused and strong engagement by Brussels to create framework, historical, legal binding agreement between two sides. Brussels cannot just provide one room and some restaurants. It has to invest in the solution. It has to invest resources, people, and time in closing this chapter. I believe that Madam Mogherini will do this. Second, we also need Washington to remain engaged. I met Les Mitchell, new Assistant Secretary of State recently, and I have also met Vice President Mike Pence several times, and there is a strong interest in the United States to help again and again. Last week, I also had good chance and good meetings with President Macron and Chancellor Merkel. And there's a strong will in Paris and Berlin to help us achieve this agreement. Chancellor Kurz also shares and welcomes this agenda and stands ready to help and to energize the process while Austria has the chairmanship of the EU. And third, the solution in a negotiation between Kosovo and Serbia must be win-win for all. It cannot be measured in kilometers of territory, but in progress for the future EU integration. We must provide maximum security and position for Kosovo Serbs, but also an equal place for Kosovo in family of United Nations. We already made a very difficult compromise in the end, and Ambassador Rohan Petric knows this. People of Kosovo know this. But we can extend our arms to serve Kosovo even more, provide extra assurances needed. Ladies and gentlemen, Kosovo is ready for dialogue, ready for compromise, ready for agreement, ready for European relationship with Serbia. Ladies and gentlemen, for the book, it's not my book, I give it to you to the authors. They wrote the book, and I read too. At the same time, they give strong criticisms to me, but we live in this real world, and thank you very much for your presence today. Ambassador Rohan Petric, thank you very much for your invitation. Thank you very much, dear Prime Minister, my friend Kate, that you find time to come here, and I congratulate again you for your leadership in our country, for your urban vision and deeply reforms, definitely important. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, President Thaçi, for thanking Austria so much. I realized you spent 2/3 of your words speaking about what Austria did for Kosovo. I have to admit I quite liked this, but I saw this as a commitment for the future. I hope you understand this in the right way. But also thank you for reminding us that you're convinced that the European Union has to invest in solutions in the problem at hand, and that there are win-win solutions available for both sides if compromises can be found. And then also for saying, I would not say the same thing, but you said US has to stay engaged. I do understand how important the US involvement is, because I spent a few days in Pristina, and whenever I turned the corner, I arrived on the boulevard Bill Clinton. right in the center of Pristina. The President has agreed that we can have a short Q&A session. So please, if there are questions to him or to the other speakers of the panel, you can ask questions or statements now. We have a few minutes. I will take 2 or 3 of them. Yes, please. Do we have?
Thanks a lot, dear audience, ladies and gentlemen. I think this event today should also provide a little bit space for criticism. Honestly, I am very astonished and deeply amazed that the OSTE, the Viennese Diplomatic Academy, provides space here for such a one-sided, very one-sided view on this conflict, and provides no room for a debate with the other side as well. And there was a word about the democratic and sterile Kosovo nowadays. Just yesterday, there were new attacks against Serbs in Lithuania. Every second day we can read something somewhere from the villages in Kosovo. And of course, Mr. Roman, Mr. Petric, you know President Thaçi very well. You know exactly, very exactly, for many years, what is his background, what is his past. And really, I must emphasize that in all of your words, there was no single words about those happenings, those problems which took place in the Kosovo War. There's not just one side, there are also 2 sides. And I must remember you that also the US CIA registered the KLA until 1998 as a terroristic organization. And therefore, I must emphasize that this is also the second picture of Mr. Thaçi. And therefore, I say thank you, but in such a one-sided debate, I don't want to take part anymore, and therefore I leave the room. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for your comment. It was not a question, so if you would have a question, we could give you an answer. I couldn't see a question in this comment, so I asked for questions at this open discussion. Please. Yes.
Hello.
Please.
Economic City. I was in Kosovo with Pristina, promoting the government's procedure of the noble citizenship of the economy. I'd like to ask Mr. Thaçi about the security procedure with the United Nations. How you see the safety procedure in the management, the government, in the nuclear area, how you see Kosovo for the future to moving your secrets.
I will continue in Albanian language. Kosovo është unë mund të them deri se Kosova për vendën më të sigurta në Evropë. Se është prezenca e NATO-s, një prezencë e fuqishme, në të njëjtën kohë nuk kemi ndonjë rrezik nga askush për tu atakuar, në anën tjetër ne kemi themeluar institucionet tona relevante të sigurisë për të qenë pa kompromis edhe në luftë kundër fundamentalizmit, edhe në luftë kundër terrorizmit, ndërsa po punojmë maksimalisht për themelimin e forcat armatosura të Kosovës, qenë ushtri etnike, që përket mbi 10% me minoritar, rreth 5% me serbë, do t'jetë standardeve të NATO-s dhe shpresoj në një proces të kontinuar në NATO dhe Shtetet e Bashkuara të Amerikës do të themelohet kjo shtrirje dhe të bërë procesin e pariteritetit për pas të jemi dhe pjesë NATO. Do të thotë një rrezik për sigurinë e Kosovës, por dhe do të jemi të vëmendshëm.
Thank you. We are open for questions and comments. Yes, please.
Yes. This little incident shows that it's really the solution is near and far as far as Albanians and Serbs are concerned. I wanted to ask something which is very often raised by those people who just have not disposed about political finance terrorism. It is the future of the Albanians in the Balkans. There is always in the background and sometimes also in the article, particularly when they are inspired by, on the Serb side, that Kosovo and Albania are planning to merge once again into a great Albania. I would very much like to ask both of you, what is your answer to these suppositions or statements or combinations?
Faleminderit shumë, Zoti Vendvaj. NATO në Kosovë ka një respekt jashtëzakonshëm për të gjitha komuniteteve shqiptare, serbe, vëllezërve, tojë, bosnjakë. Është edhe shpresa edhe besimi jo. Dhe kurdo që mund të ketë pikë për intervenimin e NATO-s, mendoj se është pikavuar. Edhe për prezencën, ose është nevojshme për paqen dhe stabilitetin jo vetëm në Kosovë, por me mesazh për të Ballkanin perëndimor, por në të njëjtën kohë ne nuk duam që të kemi vetëm NATO në Kosovë, por edhe Kosova të jetë pjesë e NATO-s. Dhe kjo është një opinion masiv i qytetarëve të Kosovës, është edhe vizioni i qytetarëve të leadershipit kosovar. Unë dihem shumë krenar që jam president një vendi me pro-evropian në Ballkanin perëndimor dhe me pro-amerikan në Evropë. Tash e di që të gjithë nuk pajtohen me pavarësinë e Kosovës dhe i pamë edhe reagimet, por orientimin perëndimor të Kosovës nuk ka forse do të mund të takojë. Kosova është vend i pavarur dhe sovran, ka institucione dezignime. Natyrisht se Kosova, Shqipëria dhe gjitha vendet e rajonit pretendojnë që të bashkohen, të hapin kufit, por ky bashkim tendon në familjen e madhe evropiane në Bruxelles. Për Shqipërinë e madhe të drejt flitet të shkruhet mas tepër në Beograd. Po jo në Prishtinë në Tiranë. Po më shumë më tepër në Tiranë.
First of all, I don't think that this little Serb manifestation here shows that we are too far. I think it shows that we live in a Balkan passionate conflict, but not anymore with blood and with deadly consequences, but with some setups in front of media, and then life goes on normally. So this is good, I think. They did a good job for their own self. As for the Greater Albania, it's true what Hashim says. It's if we would Google Greater Albania, we would find an incredible amount of use of this notion in Serbia, in Greece, and in other places, but not in Albanian language. It's a word that is not used so much. And the way it is used is always by interpreting in a kind of very stigmatizing way what sometimes we say. So I've been object of this interpretation several times. Hashim is more cautious, and that's why he's never a victim of this. But I have to say very frankly that what I've said is not that I see it like a solution. But I've said that if Albanians will be left out of a clear perspective and out of the natural path we are in, and the natural path we are in both in Albania and Kosovo is to be part of a greater Europe. So if there is something greater we dream nowadays, is the greater Europe. And of course we dream the greater Europe also because we want to be together more than we are today, by no doubt. But if this fades away, because I'm also in the middle of a process of diplomatic efforts, and I remember now the title of this film, American film, where the guy says, I have seen things you won't believe. So this is all, and what we are experiencing today is a kind of consequence of frustrating situations. Kosovo was pushed very hard to salute this demarcation, and was told very openly that you do it and we liberalize visa. Demarcation is done, visa are not liberalized, and people are not idiots. People listen, people feel, people accumulate, and this is something that is harmful. So what one would respond to someone that says, for the sake of anti-European propaganda in Kosovo, you thought that the West will liberate Kosovo? No. It's simply changing the slave owner from Belgrade to the West. But we are isolated, we have no freedom of movement, let alone the other things, and here we are. So this is a kind of propaganda that people that want to radicalize by using anti-Western language say. Now, I know, how it goes, but no, and so on, but the fact is that there is something wrong with this. There is something that is fueling this, The only population in Europe that can't move freely. I don't understand Why? Where is the reason? And it's not about 50 million people. It's about a little population in the middle of Europe that is stuck after having made all this war and after having made all this effort. And secondly, I would say that Kosovo is today the shining city on the hill when it comes to respect for minorities. I can tell you it's unique. So there is no comparison between how Serbs are treated in Kosovo and how Albanians are treated in Preševo. There is no comparison. I'm not saying that they are doing this or that. I'm saying simply that if we put standard, Kosovo is the highest standard, and then the rest follows. So Kosovo has become really a very, very secure place for Serbs and everyone else. It's true. It's true. And one accident here, one incident there is like these guys. They stand up, they got some pictures, they go now and they fuel some imagination in some shitty website. But that's it. Nothing else. What happens in Kosovo is totally different. So, to finish, I would say, no, it's Greater Albania has been created as a notion by them who wanted to harm Albania. Has been created by the alibi to say, you know, we have to squeeze these guys because they want to occupy the world. We have to kill these guys because they want to expand. We have to divide these guys because if they are together, they can come in our homes and create the Albanian Empire. This has been created to justify offensives and to justify cleansing and to justify killing. And I don't know, really, I don't know, even among the most nationalistic figures of our romantic times of Renaissance and whatever, one that has mentioned this term like Greater Albania. I don't know. I know Greater Serbia. I know Greater Greece, yes. I know Greater, but Greater Albania, no. Mentioned by Albanians. No. And this is dangerous. This is very dangerous. But, you know, it's like calling for the wolf and calling for the wolf and calling for the wolf. Maybe, you know, you create the wolf. So it's also this possibility. The thing is that we need now Europe to be serious. I say serious because Europe says that it's a place of strictness and fairness. What we are experiencing personally, I'm seeing a place of strictness and unfairness for the moment. So, and it's always easy to bash, you know, to say, oh, but we don't liberalize visa with Kosovo because, you know, there is corruption. You know, there is something terrible happening. Yes, you in Albania have done good things, you've done great reforms, but, you know, there is corruption. You know, there is organized crime. And this goes on and goes on and goes on. This is totally unfair. And people are not idiots. I repeat, Albanians especially are not stupid. Who takes them for stupid? Pays a very, very high price. But in times that we don't know, this is what I'm saying. And I think it's time to really understand this. We don't have any plan of any greater thing than bringing our country in Europe with two states. We don't want to make troubles. This is all. And we are very happy to see the development with Serbia that is going in a very good direction, frankly. We have good relation. They have more difficult relation in Kosovo, but it's normal. So I think there is a lot of realism more than before, also in Belgrade. So it's a process, but Europe needs to be strategic on that. It's not being strategic. It's taking it for granted. And this is not good. This is not good. And I know that again, someone will say Edi Rama is provoking, is threatening. I never threatened more than Jean-Claude Juncker, frankly. I never said, or we integrate the Western Balkans, or there will be another war. I never said it. He said, Jean-Claude Juncker. Nobody said that he was threatened. Maybe he was a bit exaggerating in my view. But it's a way to say that we are exposed to many threats. Hashim spoke about radicalism. And they are being, in Kosovo, they are being very harsh against every form of radicalism. But it's not easy, because what you say to an imam that tells you, hey, why they are not leaving us to move freely? We were under Yugoslavia, under Tito, under Milosevic even, and we could move freely. We had the passport, and he could come to Austria. He could come to Austria. His son can't come to Austria without a visa. He could come without visa during dictatorship. Now, how this can... So, if I was his son, I'd say, hey, what's the problem? You were going to Austria without visa and I need a visa? And you are the commander-in-chief? This is how it is. It's absurd.
Thank you for your open and frank response to the question. Yes, please.
I have another question. Hello, I'm Vardan Potje. I'm a student of the University of Economics in Vienna. And so my question goes in this direction. First of all, I will ask, you mentioned that Sebastian Kurz, the Prime Minister of Austria, is a strong supporter of the Kosovo's process to EU. Could you give me a description in detail in the recording regarding the bilateral relationship between Kosovo and Austria, and especially maybe in the economic aspects? And the second question would be, I will finish my studies by the end of the year. Could you give me a reason to come back to Kosovo? Thank you very much.
Would you like to answer directly? Yeah.
Përsëri e theksoj, Austria ka qenë adresa shumë rëndësishme edhe për lirinë dhe për pavarësinë e Kosovës. Dhe sot përsëri është një adresë dërkohë për qytetarët evropianë për Kosovën dhe për këtë Ballkanin Perëndimor. Se thonë, ato për arsye se Austria njeh e kupton dhe njeh Ballkanin Perëndimor. Më mirë do të thotë se të bashkëpunojnë. Ne kemi diskutuar me kancelarin Kurz, i cili që në momentet e parë është përzgjedhur ministri i jashtëm ka vizituar Kosovën dhe zonën e tjera të Ballkanit Perëndimor. E theksoj edhe ai i njeh shumë mirë realitetin e Kosovës, por dhe ndjen ndjeshmëri e problematikës së Ballkanit Perëndimor. Këtë dhe kryeministri Roma për domosdoshmërinë e lëvizjes pas drejt perspektivës evropiane. Por rrezikisht, kjo çështje e standardeve dhe statusit evropian, implementimit të tyre për demokratinë dhe statusit evropian, duhet të shkojë paralelisht. Ne dimë se nuk jemi të përkryer, por realisht jemi evropian shumë. Dhe jemi bindur që nuk do ta ngarkoni Bashkimin Evropian, përkundrazi vetëm sa të ta ndihmoni. Tash, Austria prenis korriku dhe ta nëndhecën e në Bashkimin Evropian, presidentit, dhe zoti kush do ta ketë nevojë shumë të rëndësishme. Unë kam besim plot në dëshirën e tij, në vizionin e tij, dhe për kushtimin e tij për sjelljen e unitetit evropian në procesin para se gjithashtu të negociata mes Kosovës dhe Serbisë. Kosova për parë mori pjesë në samitin të Bashkimit Evropian, duke qenë vetëm të Ballkanit në Sofje. U ka gëzuar një vlerësim afirmativ për gjitha vendet të Bashkimit Evropian, ani pse Kryeministri Spanjol Rajoy nuk ka qenë aty, por ambasadori spanjol ka qenë prezent. Do të ishte një mbështetje ekonomike evropiane. Së përket rolit të Austrisë, Austria përktoi Austria zgjedhjes që mundin nëse të kanë investuar në Kosovë. Do të thotë jemi ndihmë mirë. Unë dëshiroj edhe sot të shpresoj që hapësirë ku jemi këtu për të ftuar investitorë të tjerë që të vinë të investojnë. Shkruar të ndihmë mirë të investime, registracion të bashkëkohor, dhe me reformë në vërtet apo klim shumë sot. Derisa Austria kanë sukses, por dhe tash po vinë edhe investitorë amerikanë dhe termocentrale në KosovaPress në investim prej 1 miliard e 300 milionë euro. Atëherë edhe të tjerë kanë arsye që të vinë. Unë ju uroj të përgëzoj ju për studimet në vjen, sepse ju duhet vini në Kosovë, që është e para vendlindje e këtë, dhe është mundësia për të ndërtuar karrierën tuaj, mirën tuaj, familjes tuaj, dhe natyrës së tërgoj dhe edukimi juaj në Austri është i nevojshëm dhe do të thoshëm në Kosovë. Atë është i vogël, por është mundësi e madhe për secilin prej nesh. Dhe ne me filluam në menduar se pse do të kthehemi në Kosovë, se do të kthehemi në Shqipëri, se do të kthehemi në Shqipëri, se do të kthehemi në Kroaci. Ndoshta do të jetu jashtë, po jetu edhe këtu në Vjet, para te, po kumleris, po shkollën në Zvicër, edhe nga që kumleris, po këtu në Kosovë. Jo këtu ditë shumë thranë, por nuk pasëm ndoshta shpresë e besim që do ta përfundoj atë kapitull të historikut të vendit të popullit tim. Dhe që të karim është edhe i gjatë dhe po këm pas besim vendit tim, perspektivën e vendit tim, Kosova nuk për vetëm parë dhe zilë, prandaj për gjitha, erë një të ndërtojnë i bashkë. Potenciali, ide, edukimi vinoj, a shumë i njësarë dhe përtishë nevojshë.
Thank you very much, President Thaçi. I think these are the best final words that we can have for such a meeting, for such a book presentation. I have to say, I went with 50 students of the Diplomatic Academy to the Balkans just 10 days ago. And we drove from Sarajevo to Belgrade, and then from Belgrade to Pristina. And I'm very neutral here, I'm an Austrian. I can tell you, and the students felt the same way. When we came from Belgrade to Pristina, there was a different spirit at this moment in the cities. And the spirit in Pristina was much more open, much more modern, and much more promising than the one in Belgrade. That's not to say that I like them that way, but it only says that there is something going on in a positive way, and I think we do the correct thing to try to help you in this. President Thaçi, I think on behalf of all of us, we thank you for being here with us. We thank also Prime Minister Indirama, and let me also thank our discussants, everyone, and welcome people. Thank you all for coming.
I